Okay, again, I want to echo what Mark Gersman said, as well as ALJ McBride, and thank you for coming out tonight. As she said, I'm Gene Kelley. I'm the Regional Director of the DEC Region 4 office. We invited many representatives of these agencies to join us to help answer your questions. Staff from these agencies have been at the tables for the last hour or so, and will remain at the tables until at least 10 p.m. tonight, throughout the evening, even during the comment period, to answer any questions and provide information that you may request. I'll start the meeting with a brief opening presentation. A representative from global companies will then provide an overview of the company's permit application and the way the company conducts operations at the Port of Albany. We'll then take a short break before providing you with an opportunity to comment on the draft air permit before the DEC and other concerns about Global's facility and the transport of crude oil in general. We're here tonight to provide information about Global Company's operations and its air permit application that is under consideration before the Department of Environmental Conservation. This permit seeks permission to install 7 boilers to heat crude oil at the Port of Albany. As you have heard, DEC and other staff are available to answer questions about the port facility, and you'll have the opportunity to provide comments on the draft air permit. We know that many of you have other concerns about train traffic and operations at the Port of Albany as well, which is another important reason why we scheduled this public information meeting. A number of federal, state, and local agencies play a role in making sure that operations at the Port of Albany are safe. For example, at the state level, these agencies include the Department of Environmental Conservation, or you may hear it referred to as DEC throughout the evening, the State Department of Transportation, the State Department of Health, and the New York State Division of Homeland Security and Emergency Services. At the federal level, DEC partners with the U.S. Coast Guard, which is responsible for the addressing transport and spills in the Hudson River, and the Environmental Protection Agency, or the EPA, which reviews and approves facility response and emergency response action plans for major oil storage facilities. The Federal Railroad Administration is responsible for national rail safety issues. And federal agencies are the only rail agencies that regulate rail transportation and rail transport equipment, like cars and tanks. At the local level, the Albany County Emergency Management Office and the City of Albany Fire Department both have an active role in planning, preparing for, and responding to incidents at the port. DEC works very closely with these first responders. The Global facility at the Port of Albany operates under a number of air, water, and petroleum storage regulations designed to protect the community's health and the environment. This includes control of air emissions at all truck, rail, and marine barge and tanker transfer points, as well as emissions from the storage tanks themselves, which have a mechanism to minimize emissions. Rest assured that we are conducting a comprehensive review of a range of issues related to Global's operations and the permit application. That's why we're holding the public meeting tonight, and that's why we're taking public comment. Under state and federal requirements, Global must have a spill containment, control, and countermeasures plan, which covers all rail, truck, and marine barge tanker transfer operations, and product storage. Storage tanks have to meet standards for tank strength and quality, and scheduled testing for leaks is also required. Another safety requirement includes extra barriers to contain any spill and the use of best management practices to collect stormwater and to treat it if necessary. Rail safety is a very serious concern. Many of us have seen or read about the derailments of tank cars carrying crude oil. One thing some people may not realize, however, is that the federal agencies have exclusive authority to regulate the oil transportation by rail. The state has no direct role in this, but we are demanding federal authorities improve rail safety to an even greater extent. Plus, Governor Cuomo's budget for next year provides funding for 5 more freight rail safety inspectors. That will double the current Department of Transportation's inspection capability on the state's equipment and on the 3,500 miles of track in the state. Now, there were a number of questions raised at a recent Albany Common Council meeting, so let me address some of the issues that were discussed. The safety of all New Yorkers is DEC's highest priority, and state and local responders train vigorously for all kinds of hazmat-related emergencies, including railcar incidents involving crude oil and ethanol. Global has developed a facility response plan, an emergency response plan, and a spill prevention, control, and countermeasures plan, all of which have been approved by federal agencies. In the case of a spill or other emergency at this facility, the first Global employee to discover it or to be notified of it will direct personnel in the area to immediately prepare for emergency response activities. He or she must then immediately notify fire and police departments, a qualified individual, and a qualified individual is defined in the law as someone with emergency training who's been identified by the company in the response plan, or that person's alternate, and advise that person of the nature of the incident. And finally, the terminal manager. The terminal manager determines which agencies, organizations, and individuals are to be notified, depending upon the nature of the emergency. At the same time these notifications are being made, Global personnel and the company's primary spill contractor would be called to report to the terminal right away. The community would be notified of major releases by first responders if needed, or through local media. In addition to the other response requirements I just mentioned, state law requires Global to notify DEC within 2 hours of any petroleum discharge by calling the New York State Oil Spill Hotline at 1-800-457-7362. And the DEC has spill responders who would immediately go to the scene of the spill to oversee containment and cleanup operations. The following are included in this facility's response plan: information about the facility, emergency notification procedure and phone list, spill response notification form, emergency response personnel, equipment list, evacuation plan, spill response plan, facility diagrams, and maps. These maps and plans will be readily available to you on our website, and print copies will be at the Howe branch of the Albany Public Library, right near here on Schuyler Street, and at DEC's central office on Broadway in Albany. The current permit application before DEC is called a Clean Air Act Title V permit. Specifically, Global is requesting to change its oil handling capabilities to include heated petroleum products, crude, residual fuel, and biofuels. It's important to note that the permit modification does not pertain to the transport of fuel or storage capacity at the terminal. In fact, under the proposed application, the maximum amount of crude oil that would be allowed to pass through the facility will be reduced by 50 million gallons per year. Specifically, Global is seeking to install 7 new boilers to heat petroleum products to help the fuel flow more easily during transfer. Under state regulation, 3 of the boilers are exempt from permitting because they do not meet the minimum threshold to need a permit. 4 of the boilers do meet the threshold, and that's why Global has applied for a permit. As part of a seeker review, seeker standing for the State Environmental Quality Review Act, DEC determined that the installation of the new boilers would not have a significant adverse environmental impact because there would be no adverse air emissions to surrounding areas. Emissions from the petroleum handling process will remain essentially the same. but the operation of the boilers will emit a relatively low level of no more than 28 tons per year of oxides of nitrogen. By comparison, the Bessicourt power plant across the river in Rensselaer can emit up to 210 tons per year of NOx. We've also received some questions from the public, and we're going to attempt to answer all of those tonight. There may be a few that are not addressed, and to the extent they're not addressed tonight, we have committed to addressing each of those questions in detail at follow-up engagements with the public. DEC has requested and Global has agreed to implement an enhanced public outreach plan to engage the community and residents surrounding Global's facility consistent with DEC's environmental justice policy. In its presentation, Global will provide additional information about this outreach plan. Also, in response to public concerns, as Mark Gersman mentioned, DEC has extended the public comment period until April 2nd, and we scheduled tonight's public information meeting to help inform all of you and the entire local community about the proposed project. Again, this is the first step in an ongoing basis of engagement with the public in an effort to solicit as much comment as is necessary. DEC welcomes feedback on the draft permit, and all comments will be carefully considered before a final determination on the permit modification is made. DEC has followed the public notice and comment requirements for this type of air permit modification, and we will continue to provide you with information throughout this process. One concern that has been raised concerns impacts to local air quality. DEC operates an air quality monitoring network throughout New York. In fact, the monitor is located at the Albany County Department of Health building on Ferry and Green Streets, just about 1,000 feet from here. Data from that monitor, as well as data from the other monitors in the capital region, shows that the entire area meets federal air quality standards set by EPA. Also, in response to a community question, Global's proposed project would not involve any pipelines or changes to power lines. On the screen before you, you can hopefully see the locations of the proposed boilers. We also have a site map that identifies the location of the proposed boilers. It's available on our website as well. So in case you can't see this, you can observe it on our website. As I previously mentioned, DEC requested and Global has agreed to implement a public outreach plan to engage the environmental justice community and residents surrounding Global's facility. I also want to remind you that public comments can be submitted until April 2nd at the following email address: r4dep@gw.dec.state.ny.us. That's available on the screen. Right there. Right there on the bottom of the screen. We'll leave that up there for a little while if anybody wants to write that down. In addition, you can also use Gov Delivery to sign up online to be notified when our web page is updated. Also, materials related to Global's permit application and emergency response plans will be available at the Howe branch of the Albany Public Library, right here on Schuyler Street, and at the DEC Central Office at 625 Broadway. Again, thank you for taking the time out of your schedule to attend this meeting, and I would now like to turn it back over to you. Okay, I'll turn it back over to Administrative Law Judge McBride. Thanks.
Thank you, Gene. Next one.